Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I'm going to be doing a book tag. Typically I don't do tags, which I know is not the booktube thing to do, but here we are and it's my channel and you know. So anyways, recently I was tagged in a new tag called the Indie Fantasy Reader tag. I probably totally butchered that, but it was started by my friend Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy, link down below to the original video so you can go check hers out. Cassidy is a huge indie fantasy fan just like me, and I love this idea for a book tag, so I decided to, you know, drag myself over to the popular corner of booktube and actually do a book tag. I am going to tag a few specific people at the end of this video. That being said, if you're watching this and you feel like this is something you would love to do, feel free to grab those questions and do them on your channel as well. So the first question that I need to answer is, what got me into reading indie fantasy? The short answer to that is that I am also an indie fantasy author. I am the author of the Supernatural Fantasy Phased, which you can find on Amazon, links down below. And I had just kind of started getting into the community on BookTube, and I discovered Patrick Leo, link down below, who you all know to be an incredible champion for indie fantasy authors, and I was so excited to discover a community surrounding indie fantasy, and I wanted to delve in and read more of it. So that's kind of how I got started in it. I wanted to read more of what was being produced in indie fantasy and kind of catch myself up to date. Question number 2, what is my favorite thing about indie fantasy? There are so many ways I could answer this question, honestly. And with the disclaimer that I love fantasy in general and that to me, I have favorites both in traditionally published fantasy and indie published fantasy. But I think what I really love about the indie fantasy market specifically is that there's so much unlimited fresh takes on the genre, and I think that without some of the limitations that may be involved with traditionally publishing fantasy, authors really have the opportunity to stretch and grow and genre blend and try new things, and that oftentimes can result in some pretty incredible new material for the genre. And I think that's so incredibly important. And it's also, I think, to some degree, a little bit more unfiltered, especially with new authors. They're not trying to fit a certain trend necessarily. They can if they want to, but it's not a requirement. They're not kind of shifting around their idea to fit a specific mold, and you can really tell in a lot of these stories. And I think that is something that I have learned to really appreciate about indie fantasy. What is my favorite indie fantasy book or series? There's so many. If you've been around my channel for a while, you've heard me talk about so many of them. The one that I've held up the most in answer to this question is obviously Mortal Techniques by Rob J. Hayes, which begins with Never Die. My favorite in this series is actually the third one, Spirits of Vengeance. It's chef's kiss. However, recently I have picked up a series that I think, if it keeps going the way it's going, is definitely going to end up on my favorite fantasy series list, and for sure indie fantasy lists, and that is the Riverfall Chronicles by Jacqueline Hagan. Starts with the Wickwire Watch. I have recently read the second book, The Spider Key, and it just leveled up in every possible way. I purchased the third book, Blue Flames, which came out August 1st this year, minutes after finishing book 2, and I just love these characters so much, and I'm really excited to see where the rest of this series goes. Alright, the next question is, what is a high priority indie series for me on the TBR? Now, I could sit here for about 20 minutes and go through a list. I picked just 3 that have been sitting high up on the TBR for a while. Obviously, I want to read more Rob J. Hayes since he's one of my favorite indie authors already, and I want to get into some of his other series. But here's a few outside of the 2 that I've already mentioned. The first one is Sword of Sorrow, Blade of Joy by J.F. Lee. As you guys may know, if you've been around my channel, I love a good Asian flavor fantasy so much. And this one, I believe, is set in a land inspired by Korea, which is very exciting to me because I'm a massive fan of Korean dramas and storytelling and music. I think this one's really going to be a great time, and I'm very excited to read it. Next up is a classic fantasy series by an author that is fairly well known in the indie community, and that is the Echoes saga, which begins with Rise of the Ranger by Philip C. Quaintrell. This is one that I know that I mentioned on the series that I'd like to get to in 2023. It's been on my anticipated 5-star reads list. It's been on a lot of my videos already, and the year is just going by so quickly, and I really hate that. I need like 4 clones of myself to read everything that I would like to read. But this book is definitely one of the next big indie series that I will be picking up because I'm really looking forward to it. Philip is an awesome author and a really cool presence within the community, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Last but not least on this list is a book that my dear friend Kay's Hidden Shelf, who I will link below if you're an indie fantasy lover or looking to get into indie fantasy. Kay does some incredible reviews. She's a wonderful booktuber. Go check her channel out. And she has been trying, bless her heart, to get me to read this book for a while, and that's putting it very mildly, but that is Nomads of the Sea by Kobe Zucker. This one, as you can see, is a bit of a chonky boy, but I have heard incredible reviews for this book, and from what Kay has told me, I think this one is going to be right up my alley. It is a nautical military fantasy from what I understand. Motley crew, very big heart behind the story with some great characters, and I'm really looking forward to this. Next question is, where do I find out about indie books? Honestly, the best place that I've found to discover new indie books is right here on BookTube. I have so many incredible friends that read indie fantasy that we all kind of share recommendations with each other, and there are so many great videos done by channels that I know talking about indie fantasy books and series, doing author reviews and book reviews and top 10 lists and everything you could possibly want. So any of the channels that I have already mentioned, I will also put down in the description box below a list of channels I recommend for people looking to get into indie fantasy, because there are some really, really great people championing indie fantasy out here on BookTube, and you should definitely give them all a subscribe and check out some of their content. Another place that I do get a lot of indie fantasy info, especially for new releases, is over on Twitter. There's a pretty lively indie fantasy community over there. I'm also on a bunch of Discords. So if you want to find a Discord that you can join, check out most of the channels that I'll link below. Either are in Discords or have their own Discords. So there's a lot of great places that you can check to join in the discussion with some other book lovers that are into indie fantasy as well. The next question is an indie fantasy you'd recommend to someone just starting indie. Now, the questions like this always kind of give me a little bit of a pause because it so much depends on what you already like. I'm very hesitant to just recommend books to people without knowing what their previous reading experience and taste is. So I'm just going to run through a list of some options for you guys depending on what you may like outside of indie. Now, first of all, if you're into Gaslamp fantasy and you want a great motley crew with a main character that's a little bit in the Oliver Twist Dickensian kind of side of things, the Huckleberry Finn, the Locke Lamora vibes, then you're going to want to start with The Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan. If you are a anime or wuxia films or anything Asian inspired fan, definitely go ahead and check out The Mortal Techniques by Rob J. Hayes, which starts with Never Die. There is some incredible magical combat in these books. The characters are incredible and they are just fantastic. If you are looking for a heist type of story mixed with a murder mystery that's all packed into a very intimate fantasy setting, go ahead and check out The Blood of Crows by Alex C. Pierce. This is one of my favorite indie reads of the year so far, and I highly recommend this one. If you want to get a tiny taste test of a little bit of Grimm's fairy tales meets the kind of Miyazaki film flavor, check out Seasons of Albion by Ilan Marche and Chris Warman. This is a book that contains 4 short stories that are all tied together in the same world. The thing that's really cool about this one is that there are some kind of fairy tale moral questions posed within a really vibrant fantasy world. If you are a fan of young adult, coming of age, dragon rider type stories, then go ahead and check out Ascendant by Michael R. Miller. And if you're already a fan of supernatural or paranormal fantasy, go ahead and give my book Phased a check out. This one is the story of 2 werewolf sisters with a lot of heart, deep themes, and a lot of great action. Now, if you're a fan of Tolkien or classic fantasy and you're looking for the next series to really take you on a world-building ride, then you're going to want to check out Deathless Beast, which is the first book in the Collation Saga by my friend Andrew D. Meredith. So those are some to get you started. If you're looking for your first indie fantasy read, let me know if any of those sound interesting to you, and if you have a specific recommendation request, feel free to drop it down in the comments and I will find you a book that I think would be a good fit. The next question is my favorite indie fantasy cover. Now this one is another hard one to answer because there are so many great covers in this community. It's just kind of blowing my mind, especially this year. A lot of the new releases have just been absolutely S tier. But a couple that I absolutely love that I grabbed off the shelf right away is The Assassin of Grins and Secrets by my friend K.E. Andrews. This is an incredible book with an assassin main character that goes really, really deep and dark with some incredible character interactions. And the other one that I'm going to pick up is a book that I actually just recently finished, and it is a science fiction fantasy called Down Below Beyond by T.A. Bruno. So this book is, as you can tell, not super long, but man, does it pack an absolute salvager gun punch. This book was incredible. I'm planning on dropping a review for it shortly, so check that out. But if you are interested in checking out a really great motley crew sci-fantasy with absolutely beautifully done alien races, this is a book to check out. Next question is, do I approach reviewing indie fantasy books differently? Now this is an interesting topic for me and I've had lots of conversations about it. You should definitely go check out my video about should we review self-pub and indie books. Honestly, for me specifically, when I approach reviewing indie fantasy is I'm not any less honest or transparent about my opinions about the books. But another thing that I do consider is the fact that very often I'm within the first 10, 20, 50, or 100 reviews that are going to be on this book. And so I try to take a little bit more time and give a little bit more depth to my review whenever possible, because obviously if I write a big, huge review of a book like Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, that might help some people, but there are so many thousands and thousands of great reviews on those books already that I do tend to take a little bit more time for the books that I read that have a lot less reviews on them. But in terms of being transparent and honest, I don't really rate indie books any differently than I rate books that are traditionally published, because in my opinion, they're on the same playing field in so many ways. And for a lot of people that believe that indie isn't at the same caliber as traditional publishing, I highly beg to differ. There are some incredible books coming out in the self-pub community that can easily run in the same league as the best of trad pub. The next one is an upcoming anticipated indie fantasy release. There are so many books that I could mention here, but I actually want to draw some attention to a book that recently came out, and that is Isla's Reach by Francesca Liliana. This is an indie author who is a massive fan of Malazan Book of the Fallen, and this is her debut novel that is set in a grim, dark world, and I am just so excited to get to this book. She very kindly sent me a review copy, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Number 10, what indie author would you choose to write your story with me as the protagonist? I have thought about stuff like this before and tried to figure out who I would have like finish my books if something happened to me, or like, you know, the morbid things that authors think about. And honestly, I don't know. That's such a weird question to think about, and I really don't know who I would want to write my... I don't know. It would have to be someone who...
I'm struggling right now, you guys. Like, I don't know who I would pick.
I don't know. I could see a combination of my friend K.E. Andrews, who is the author of The Assassin of Grins and Secrets, and also my friend Jacqueline Hagan, who is the author of the Riverfall Chronicles, with some input from my best friend Sarah Ferrari, who is my illustrator. I don't know. That's a really weird question to consider. So that's the best I got. I don't know. Jackie and Katie, I hope you never have to write my life story, because I feel like that would be a very strange experience. The final question of this tag is an indie book that more people need to read. Honestly, I feel like any of the books that I've recommended, The Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan, please go read it. It's incredible. But another one that I'm going to pick up right here is Thrice by my friend Andrew D. Meredith. This is a lone wolf and cub style story, adventure, action adventure, about a warrior who is taking care of his adopted son Leaf, and Leaf is a little boy with way too much magic, and there are people that are chasing them to use Leaf's magic for nefarious purposes. So this is a book that is very fast-paced, easy to read. It's a great intro into indie fantasy, and it has a lot of Slavic-inspired fantasy and world-building elements, which is very cool. So this is one that I thought of immediately for this question. Next up, I am going to tag some people. I am going to tag my friend Christopher Navo. I'm going to tag my friend Kay's Hidden Shelf. I'm also going to tag my friend Ty the Reader Guy. All of you down in the comments, if you want to tag anybody else to do this, please go ahead and do that. And like I said before, if you're watching this video and you want to do this tag, feel free to consider yourself tagged by me and go ahead and let the world know your answers to these questions as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to check out all of my information down in the description box below. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, that you are reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.